So I had this conversation with a friend last night online about Indigenous issues and kind of centered on the missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls inquiry. And the idea of racism gets kind of batted around if you have any kind of opinion that doesn't go with the kind of leftist thinking about victimhood and perpetrators of in this case genocide basically. I find it, I'm not going to say too much about the issue because I don't know too much about Indigenous issues in terms of the specifics and the details, but I do know that they face many hurdles and continue to face many hurdles that are just kind of egregious. Drug addiction and drinking water issues and crime, mental health issues, suicide. So, I do understand that. I just find that having an entire country bear the burden of genocidal murder and ongoing genocide is a bit extraneous. And I feel like it kind of poisons the conversation between Indigenous people and people who are non-Indigenous that live in Canada. So that being said, I guess if you start doing the little ranking thing that people on the left usually do, maybe I'm a little bit safe because I'm a man of color and I'm an immigrant, so maybe I'm not too much to blame, but maybe I'm participating in some way. But anyway, I find that stuff silly, and I don't find it to be racism to criticize the inquiry or criticize the idea that we're all participating in some ongoing genocide. It just seems bizarre to me. But I'll leave it there. I don't think I'm alone in thinking that. But like I said, I don't know too much about everything, so I'll just leave it there. Anyway, so I want to talk about this ongoing thing about Bill 21 in Quebec, the secularism bill. Now, I'm going to focus on women that wear the hijab because they keep mentioning that these are the people that are affected most by that law. Um, and Sikhs and anybody else who wears like headdresses and things like that. I think with Christians, the most you can wear is basically a crucifix around your neck. I mean, you could go further. I mean, you could wear a full blown papal gown or something, but that would be silly. But if but I mean, the most you would do is wear a crucifix, and if it's not being seen, you could tuck it into your shirt, and it's not being seen, then it's fine. But would say so. Let's get back to the hijab. I think what happens a lot of times is these issues will come up about secularism and religious symbols, et cetera, et cetera. And then once you hit that wall, and it really is a wall in a lot of cases of talking about the religion itself and the requirements of the religion, somehow you're supposed to shut everything down and go no further. Somebody just has to say, well, my religion commands it, and end of story. You can't talk about religion, you can't criticize religion, you can't say anything because you get labeled a racist. And I don't know, I mean, this is a common trope. I don't know why people consider the criticizing of ideas racist. I mean, you really got to know how to separate those two. Um, a religion is an idea or a group of ideas that need to be criticized just like any other group of ideas. That's how, it's to religion's benefit that it gets criticized. It makes it more agile, more relevant. It can change with changing attitudes, changing societies, changing demographics. And it's important that it gets criticized. Like that's how ideas survive. Once they become stagnant and stale, people start leaving in droves because they just aren't relevant anymore. So that being said, I'm not going to go full head on into like the hadith and the Prophet Muhammad and stuff like that. But what I will say though is I've seen in my own experience, girls that wear the hijab kind of decide to wear the hijab later in life, like basically maybe in their teenage years or even after their teenage years, later in their teenage years. So I'm not seeing how the argument that it's just clothes or it's a personal area privacy thing. I don't see how that works because if by the time you're a teenager, you already have a good sense of your body and what's to be displayed and what's not to be displayed. So that inbuilt shame about nakedness and all that stuff has already been established in you. So by putting on the hijab, I wouldn't say that you suddenly develop this shame about your hair. So that being said, I'm saying it's not. I don't know from my experience. It seems that it's not really an issue of protecting your private parts. It's an issue of buying into the religious side of the hijab, and that so it kind of blows open the whole idea of it just being clothes, like to hide shame or hide nakedness or hide sexuality in the sense of like hiding erogenous zones or private parts, like like so it's a religious thing, and if it's if if it's arbitrary in that way, and I don't want to, I'm saying arbitrary, but if it's arbitrary in that way of wearing the hijab, then I don't think it would be a huge problem if you really want to make it in the public sector, or really want to move up in government. I don't see how it would be that much of a problem to just take it off. Um, I really don't. It seems weird to me. Um, but the other thing is, and I kind of forgetting my point now. Um, the other point is, um, yeah, if you look at other Muslim women, I think you can see that, or even just other women in general, you can see that the hijab doesn't actually have any effect on society. I was reading alislam.com. I think that was the site I was just reading about the hijab, and they were going on about it is important that there's a male hijab, or I think I might be fuzzing on this, but the male hijab is basically the act of lowering your gaze, so you're not staring at anybody's boobs or face, or I don't know, whatever. It all seems like nonsense to me. Um, and the woman's hijab is the thing, the covering, and maybe it's like the burqa or the niqab or whatever. I don't know how far people want to take this stuff, but the thing is, they were mentioning that because wearing a hijab on the male side or on the female side is part of the religion, it creates a better society. Um, but I think you could look at countries in the Middle East, like Iran or like Saudi Arabia, where there is a mandatory kind of covering up. But would you really call those better societies than the society in Quebec, say, or Canada? I mean, does the hijab really make a better outcome for society? I don't think it's crucial to a healthy democratic society to to wear a hijab. Like, it doesn't. I don't see how that makes sense. In terms of crime and all that stuff. I mean, you could look at many countries like Bangladesh or Pakistan, and I mean, religion doesn't necessarily make these places like better places to live. Like they're sometimes very cruel, and cruel not in the sense of anything extraneous of religion, but cruel in the sense of like specific like laws and teachings of Islam that make it crueler. One of those things being the hijab, right? 50% of women in Iran want to make the hijab a choice as opposed to mandated by law. So yeah, I don't see how that would, I don't see how the hijab creates anything. So yeah, I think that's basically what I want to say. Um, yeah, I feel like the hijab, as much as some people, I watched a TED talk once with this young girl talking about the hijab being her choice because she wants to be heard, not seen, but I don't know what that means. She was wearing a hijab. I mean, she could have, if you don't want to be seen, why not put on a full blown burqa with like a one way netting on your over your eyes and just make sounds and stuff. Anyway, that's about it. I'm up to 9 minutes, so perfect. Sorry about the kind of delay. I'm kind of hopped up on coffee, but yeah, bye.